Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in today. I'm Julie Nygaard, host of the show Life Overhaul, where we generally interview people that have gone through major life overhauls so we can kind of get their tips and tricks for how they navigated through it. But right now I decided to do a series where I just basically review my book, Life Overhaul, What Are You Waiting For? Chapter by chapter, so that if you don't want to buy the book, you don't have to. You can just do it with me on the podcast. If you want the book, it's actually in pre-sales on my website, thechocolatetherapist.com, and later it'll be available on Amazon. Again, it's called Life Overhaul, What Are You Waiting For? Which I wrote as a process for my own life overhaul, which I'm in the midst of. I did the intro to the book about how I got into this in my previous podcast, so hopefully you're following along. And this is chapter 1, which is called The Master Plan. It's the start. And what I discovered after I interviewed so many people who had overhauled their lives is that most people have a master plan. So I'm just going to take right from the book right now, and we're going to be goal setting today. So before you get started listening to this, go get a notebook and a pen so that you can do some goal setting. I really feel like this is an important part of whatever you're doing because 95% of people don't set goals. So if you do, you already put yourself up on the top 5%. I mean, don't listen to the whole thing and then come back and do it later, unless you're committed to doing it, maybe in the same day or within a day or two. Because a lot of people will just absorb information constantly and never apply it, but that doesn't get you anywhere. So it's important to do the things that you want to do that are going to make the change in your life while you're listening, rather than thinking you'll come back. Because I know you won't. I know I've done it hundreds of times myself. And this time I was like, it's going to be different. I'm going to change my life, and this is how I'm going to do it. So I'm sharing that with you here now. And I'm going to start with this quote. Our goals can only be reached through a vehicle of a plan, in which we must fervently believe and upon which we must vigorously act. There is no other route to success. That's from Pablo Picasso. Now, when I decided to overhaul my life, I went through a series of steps to figure out how to start. And after reading books and doing the podcast interviews, as I mentioned earlier, I realized there was a common thing that almost every story of the people who had already done it had. They had a clear plan on what they wanted to do as they moved into their new lives. And I say almost because a few people didn't know their next step. So it is possible to go forward without one, but it's just so much easier if you have a plan. Getting clear on what you want is like the first step to any plan, and following in the footsteps of people who have succeeded makes your task so much easier regardless of what it is. Now take a moment just to think back to the very first decision you made that sent you on the current path you're on. There's a fairly good chance that you didn't even make that decision at all. More than likely it was decided for you, or you were in a state of indifference, or maybe you were just going with the flow of the person or people that you were with. And not knowing where you're going is always going to get you on a path that you don't want to go on, right? You're just going to end up on something. If you want a different path, you have to take a different action. This time, you're going to create the plan yourself, so you'll get the desired results that you truly want. Now, what if you don't know what you want to do? You got to do the opposite. Try thinking about everything you have that you don't want. And once you've identified those things, it's safe to assume you want something close to their opposites. So here is an example using career. 1, I don't want my current job because it doesn't inspire me. I'm not surrounded by intelligent, forward-thinking people. I'm not appreciated for my contributions, and I don't get paid enough. So from that sentence, you can pick out the things you want by defining the opposite of what you don't want. Here's that example. 1, I want a job that inspires me and uses my skills. 2, I'd like to be surrounded by intelligent, forward-thinking people. 3, I'd like to be appreciated for the work I do. And 4, I'd like to make twice as much money as I do now. So what you need to do right now is stop the podcast and write down 7 things that you want. 7 things you want out of life that you currently don't have. As I was saying, knowledge isn't power unless it's applied. So if you write your ideas down while we're going here, rather than trying to come back and do everything at once, it's a lot more effective. And in fact, it's really critical to your success. So honor your decision to listen to this podcast, stop it for a moment and do the exercise now. And then, like I said, you might want to just get a journal to go through the whole podcast with me because I'm going to be going through the entire book. So when you write your goals, it's important to release the tendency to judge what you want or what your overhaul looks like. So even if it seems outrageous, you have to write it down. This is what an overhaul is all about. You can always fine-tune your list later as you're progressing, but this is kind of about letting your dream life just flow out of you and onto paper, whether or not it's realistic. Writing things down so you can see them, I think it's like seeing a therapist. You're doing all the work, they listen, and pretty soon you figure it out. Likewise, once you see your plan on paper, it's so much easier to fine-tune it and focus on exactly what you want. Now, your goals could be career-related, personal, relationships, spiritual, material, health, or kind of any other goal that you have. You can either choose 1 or 2 categories, or just try them all. And remember, this is simply goal setting. You're not going to tackle everything all at once. I'm going to go over the 7 categories again so you can write them down. And then remember, you're doing 7 items per category or choosing a category to work on. The first one is life, career, personal, relationship, spiritual, material, and health. And then you might even include a different other, something that if I haven't covered it. This is really your personal thing. So now if you don't know what you want, write down 7 things that you don't want. Then flip each of those things around into 7 things that you want. So just stop the podcast for a minute and do those things now. That's actually all that's happening in chapter 1. You're just setting your goals. You got to have a clear vision of where you're headed, or you're not going there. It's like if you were going to get in your car and drive someplace, you probably put the destination in your phone so that you could get right there in the quickest way. It's just like goal setting. Having a clear goal in your mind helps you make not only conscious decisions, but subconscious decisions about where you're going. You might make a decision during the day that you don't even realize is associated with the direction of your goal, but you're making it because you've already set your goals. I can't even re-emphasize how important this is if you want to change your life. Doesn't matter where you are in life. I mean, as I was mentioning in the intro, you could be on a good path and you just want to change your life. You could be on a bad path and you want to change your life. You could just be like, I need a completely different life. I don't like this one. I mean, it can be any reason at all. Or maybe you want to just metamorph out of wherever you are and into something completely different just for the experience of it. Whatever the case is, you have a much better chance of succeeding if you're doing this goal setting. So just take a moment, get your journal, listen to the podcast again, listen to all the categories, and write down those goals. And then when you're done with that, you can come back and listen to chapter 2, which is discovering who you are right now. It's definitely difficult to change your life if you don't know where your starting point is, because you don't know how you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be. So we're going to do some fun, interesting exercises on discovering what your current personality characteristics that hold you back and how to get rid of those so you can create the life of your dreams. Thanks for listening. I'm Julie Nygaard, author of Life Overhaul. What Are You Waiting For? Coming out on May 1st, 2020. It'll be available on Amazon and on my website, thechocolatetherapist.com. Yes, I own a chocolate company, but this is a fun, exciting adventure on overhauling the life. I'm in the midst of it. So we're all kind of going through this together, which I think is fun. That's the whole reason that I wrote the book, that I have the podcast, so we can figure out what other people did to create a successful life overhaul. And I will catch you on the next episode.